Hi, Lawrence LeBrocq, managing partner of Garces, Grabler LeBrocq. Welcome to Victim to Victory, your authority in personal injury. Today we have two incredible guests. We have Chad Dudley, who's the co-founder of Dudley DeBosier Injury Lawyers and a leading figure in the personal injury space. And we also have a great mind in Bill Biggs, who is the executive director of Garces, Grabler LeBrocq, and also the president of Fireproof around the country. So I want to welcome you both to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to start off with you, Chad. Tell us a little bit about the Orion Legal MSO and private equity firm. It's a landmark moment. You described the formation of, Orion Legal as a turning point in the PI industry. Why was a managed service organization or an MSO the right vehicle for the partnership to legally separate lawyering from operations, and how did that come about?
No, it's been it's perfect. A whole host of things came together at the right time in the right place. It's really interesting. Our firm, Dudley DeBosier, and myself, we have, started in 2009, Dudley DeBosier. In addition, I started doing consulting with law firms around 2008, 2009. And over the years, we built Dudley DeBosier into a pretty good sized firm. We have about 50 plus attorneys, about 150 plus total employees throughout the state of Louisiana, and got some really great results for our clients. And then on the consulting side, really fine tuning a lot of concepts, systems, and processes that we saw not only helped our firm grow, but helped, probably at this point, hundreds of other firms grow, and just really enjoyed that practice. And then in 2018, we started doing we did a management agreement with a firm whereby we said, we'll manage, your firm, apply all of our best practices, and come up with a mechanism where we can participate in the profit of the firm. That worked. It was very, very successful, and we wanted to do more of those deals. The challenge was that how do you scale that? How do you go about it? And honestly, the cleaner way to do it would be to own a percentage of the firm or own some part of the operations. While we were trying to figure out all this stuff, the private equity side was, looking around and saying, how can we invest in single event firms? And when we started looking for solutions to how can we scale the things that we are doing in growing law firms, it just worked out. The timing was great. As a consultant, a lot of times I'd be brought in as a buy-side consultant. The buyers would be looking at a firm and ask my opinion. Sometimes a sell-side consultant, sometimes someone just to help an independent third party to do due diligence. So I was watching all these transactions occur. And in the beginning years, it was like, okay, if you wanted to sell your law firm, maybe you can sell it to somebody in your firm for maybe 1 to 2 times your profits, right? Or your EBITDA. Then you saw some transactions where firms were buying firms. Maybe it was 2 to 3.5 times EBITDA, but not super crazy multiples. And then all this stuff starts to happen. And being a consultant, I'm watching some of these processes take place where the transactions are starting to look different. And so I talked to my partners. I said, look, I think this is a good time to explore these opportunities. I'm seeing other firms explore it. We were not the first firm to go down the path of an MSO, which is a managed services organization. We can talk about that in a second. But I think we are a firm that a lot of other firms knew. And so when there's that much connection, people take notice of it. And for us, it was a mechanism by which we could scale all the things that we do well and bring that to other firms. And we just started exploring our options, and we found a solution that made sense. We found a partner and investors that were just, we connected with them on a cultural standpoint, on values, on vision. And we said, okay, it's the time, the place, let's do it. So on January 22nd, we closed our deal with Uplift investors, and our world has changed since then. And it feels like the whole industry has changed since then.
Well, let's talk about, everything was the rage with the ABS going back. Explain the difference between an ABS and an MSO.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that, what was interesting was that, again, MSOs have been around in the legal space for a bit, and there's others that have formed. They've been very quiet about it. They've been all throughout the country. And you've seen these things happen. Now, the ABSs are relatively new in the last couple of years. I think what you saw with the ABS is the, Arizona, the first state, basically, but not the first. I mean, DC, basically said, hey, you don't have to be an attorney to have a percentage ownership of a law firm. And that was kind of like a gateway for a lot of non-legal industry, non-law, personal injury money coming in from other investors into our space. You saw it mostly in mass torts. Then when Arizona opened up the ABS option, I think it piqued a lot of people's interest. But the problem was that a lot of states, bar associations sort of retaliated and said, you cannot share fees with the Arizona, ABS. And therefore people got nervous about, well, can we create them? What's their function? And so they really shied away from the ABS structure and then leaning in toward the MSO structure, which is, it's providing services to a firm. And we can talk about why that's a more preferred structure.
Right. Now, Bill, you and Chad have been consultants for a very long time. Now, what is your feelings with regard to the future landscape? Before I go into some of the misconceptions about private equity funding, the future landscape of ABSs or MSOs or the traditional law firm?
Well, first, I would consider Chad the forerunner in most of this thought process. He's been, for as long as I've known him, it's been almost 15 years. Mm-hmm. You've been thinking about this, Chad. I mean, you've been thinking this way. You've had a growth mentality, an expansion mentality that I've always been impressed with. And the way you think about systems, about scaling, I don't think there's a better mind in the industry about how to put these things together and make a law firm really sing, right? Really function at its best. And so you're kind of wired. I know maybe some others did it before you went through the structure or maybe even sold, but I'm kind of glad you were the forerunner to get the publicity or because you represent it as well or better than anybody could in terms of how this could be done well. So congrats, number one.
Thank you. That's very, very kind words. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And yeah, I mean, I've learned so much over the years from you. So I'm thrilled to see you doing so well with all of this. If the question was to me, the difference between the MSO and the ABS, I think the ABS was going to continue to be just one entity, right? And it was going to function as a singular entity, whereas the MSO now gives you the opportunity to do some things with, you have a law firm and you have a servicing company, and that really helps clean things up. And Chad, you're going to be much more the authority on this than me, but it just seems to me that that's a lot harder to block, right?
Yeah. Well,
ABS is easy to block. MSO is hard to block.
Yeah. And the key is, doing it right and making sure it's right. And we went through a lot of time, effort, energy, expense with the best, ethics counsel and, mergers and acquisitions counsel and everything in the country to make sure all these things are done right. And so we've had it, vetted and so forth. And it's the MSO structure is basically saying, hey, there's, all law firms, especially personal injury firms, have services that are provided to them by third parties. We have people that help us with intake. We have people that help us with getting contracts in the door, medical summaries, demand letters, trial prep. I mean, you name it. There's so many third-party services that we use as a personal injury firm, and we've seen that grow over the years. So now an MSO structure basically says, what if we took all those sort of support services, put them into one entity, and then they delivered them to a firm or law firms at scale and basically charged, some price to those firms. Now, like us, Steve, James, and I are still 100% owners of our law firm, Dudley DeBosier proper. And we dictate, how legal services are delivered. All the attorneys decide how legal services are delivered on their cases. And the services organization is just that. It provides services to the law firm at the will and discretion of the attorneys that are members of the law firm, just like we interact with any other services provider. And so that's the difference. And again, when you see a lot of the legislation that is coming through, it's basically saying, okay, we get that, you can do that, but just do it right. Make sure that that MSO is not telling the law firm what to do. Make sure that MSO is not directing, like you tell any other services organization. So I think that's why people have more confidence and belief in this structure, because it's an extension of what firms are already doing.
Right. I think you're addressing one of the great fears that many attorneys have with the private equity funding, is that they're going to lose control of an ownership of their law firm. I think that's a huge fear that a lot of the law firm owners have when it comes to private equity money coming in.
Absolutely. And I understand that, because it's different, and changes sometimes be like, okay, what's this going to be like? And, we're all, the reason I love what I do, I love, one, the clients that we're lucky enough to represent. I also love the friendships I've been able to make, because there's so many like-minded individuals. I connect with plaintiff attorneys. A lot of us, do what we do because we have a passion for helping people. Kind of a little bit of renegades, where we don't, there's no way we could ever in our life just bill by the hour and feel like we live in this box and, keep track of every 6 minutes of our life. I enjoy the friendship. So when you look at those things and go, okay, now that this is your personality, how do you become part of a team? How do you become part of this more structured? And I know that is a little bit strange. I think that's why it's so important to make sure, like, hey, if you're going to join one of these things or be a partner in one of these things, like, do you connect not only with whoever maybe the investors are, but also who are the other firms? Who are the people that you're going to be working with? Do they share the same values? Do they have the same passion for doing this right, for taking care of clients? Because if you don't, I think it could be a very miserable experience. But if you get it right, it can also be a wonderful journey in terms of growing your team, growing your culture, growing your firm, your brand in ways that maybe weren't possible before all this hit.
Right. And now we know you're a master of scaling, and you want to take Orion nationally. What are some of the things that the Orion MSO is going to take away from the law firm and unburden them operationally just to concentrate on the practice of law?
Yeah. And, when we talk about the Orion services organization, we want to provide, behind the scene services to the top firms in the country. And that's the goal. And we look at that and go, we're not trying to go and change the name of a law firm. We want to keep the brands, keep the culture, keep all the things that make that firm great. We're taking on some really amazing, top-notch, high-performing firms. And as a consultant, whenever I get to, work with a high-performing firm, and I've worked with a bunch, the first rule is do no harm. Understand what makes them great, understand, how they're wired, and then, implement and work by preserving those things. And so Orion wants to take all those things I've learned through working with hundreds of firms and best practices and go, okay, how do we make each of the member firms of Orion even better? How do we provide, if they need help on the marketing, on the strategy of, the business side, how do we help make them better, right? And so that their attorneys, so many attorneys love what they do and are not in love with the things it takes to do it, right? In the sense of, if so many attorneys that we've met, if I could handle my cases, if I could represent my clients, I didn't have to worry about the back office part, about the operations, the intake, the marketing, and all those things, like, life would be better. And so for the ones that feel that way, we want to help out there. And the reality is there's a lot of attorneys that are approaching us for different reasons. I have, some attorneys are like, I want to get out completely in 6 months, like, get me out. I want to be done. I'm done. Like, okay, let's try and build a plan around that. Let's talk about how we can maybe complement that. There's some that are like, okay, I want, another 2 years. And then I think I'm going to probably, pull back a little bit. And then others are like, what? I want to go full blast for the foreseeable future. I'm just looking for a partner that we can grow with, right? So there's different reasons why some people are looking at this as an option, and there's ways to maintain the general structure of the deal, but also to fine tune it to some of those desires. And so you see that happening. And the idea is, gosh, everything's changing so fast. You look back at this piece of the puzzle, different new money coming into our industry, but then you also look at what AI is doing in our industry and technology, and you're like, technology, how it's hitting the case acquisition part, and how it's hitting the legal services delivery part, and how it's hitting it's crazy, right? And so some firms are looking at, hey, can I have a partner help me that has the resources, the capability, and the expertise to help me navigate this next 10 to 20 years in my firm's future? And that's something, because I'll tell you, on the services side, we're looking at hiring, chief technology officers, people that have built these AI teams that are just, for huge, massive companies outside our space. And now we're able to bring them into our space, because while it might not make sense for, one firm to put together a crazy team like that, if you get 10, 15, 20, 25 firms together, all of a sudden it makes sense to have a core team that can help us navigate those waters. So those are all things that, people can benefit from having. And then the way we look at our firm, everything that we do, we always ask this very grounding question is, what is in the best interest of our clients? What helps them? How do they benefit from this? And when I look at this, I go, gosh, I've worked with firms that maybe didn't call their clients as much as they wanted to or should have. And I worked with firms that maybe wanted to get better results for their clients on a consistent basis. I've worked with firms that want to execute on some of these things that absolutely benefits the clients, but they didn't have the systems or processes to make it happen. And so being able to work with them and develop those systems and processes, and seeing the improvement of the results and the service to the clients, is the ultimate mission of what we're trying to do with Orion at scale.
You touch on something there, Chad, that I've been pretty outspoken recently about. I think this is a really good thing for clients. Like I believe the infusion of private equity into the legal space is going to be phenomenal for clients. But there's a lot of people have different views about that, and there's definitely a lot of concern on the part of folks, some folks out there, that, oh, this is going to erode what's best for the client. What do you think? Where do you stand on that?
No, my gosh, I think it's, it has, I think it is a mechanism by which we can vastly improve the services that are delivered to the clients and the quality of client service. I really do, because there's, Bill, you worked with a bunch of firms. There's just a lot of great people out there that want to do the right things for the clients, but have hit a wall operationally, or may hit a wall in that regard. And when you provide consulting services on how to help them overcome that hurdle, they're like, oh my gosh, this is great. Clients are happier. We're getting better results. The team feels prouder of what they're doing. All these things like happen. And I think that this MSOs, consolidation, private equity, is only going to accelerate the spread of those standards at a more rapid rate. And the client absolutely benefits from that.
Well, Chad, I'm sorry, Bill, but Chad, you talk about you wrote a book on the 7 disciplines of successful firms, and you're big on operations. Where do you see the biggest failures in operations of law firms?
Gosh, that's so. Yes, hit the shelves with trial guides, and it's my first book, the 7 disciplines of successful firms. It's basically, having worked with hundreds of firms over the past 15 years. I've worked with firms that are startups. I've worked with firms that sign up over 1,500 cases a month and are multi-state firms, and everything in between. And I wanted to write a book that said, okay, if I were to boil down this, if I only had 7 things to tell, any firm out there in our space, what would I what would I tell them? And that's what the book is. It's 7 disciplines that they do day in, day out. And one of the messages in there is saying that, we all go to these conferences. We're trying to find out what's the latest and greatest. And we want to talk about AI and all these things, and which is great because you need to stay on cutting edge. You need to be constantly learning. With that said, building a great firm is not super sexy. It is, fanatically doing a few things consistently over long periods of time, like simple things, right? And I always use the example of like client communication. Client communication, we know, has like it's magic. It increases client satisfaction. It reduces time on desk. It impacts average fee. It impacts referrals. It impacts positive. All these things. It reduces bar complaint. It does a million things, right? And we all know it. And we all know that the client has a better experience if we're really fanatical about it. And if you ask firms going, hey, do you talk to your clients? And they go, yeah. Well, okay. Apply that. What is the fanatical execution of a simple concept over long periods of time look like? Well, for client communication, it's like, okay, well, when a client hires us, we're going to talk with them within 24 business hours. It's going to be an attorney and also get a legal assistant, and they're going to ask them these set of questions. And then we're going to talk to them every 15 days. And it's going to look like this. And then on day 60, we're going to have a conversation about this. On day 120, it's going to have a conversation like this. And And before this goes out, we're going to have this, like, it's very choreographed and designed to meet the specific needs of the client. And we're going to measure it with dashboards, and we're going to hold people accountable. And if it drops, we're going to have, they're not going to work here and all these things. That's different than saying, yeah, we talk to our clients, right? And so those are the same concept. And so when you say, what do firms typically get wrong, the phrase that has killed more firms or stunted their growth or prevented them from being what they could be, the one phrase, it's, we already do that. I cannot tell you that phrase kills firms. I mean, because there's a comment. I forget who said the quote, but I think it's Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin says, "Every man is my superior in one way, and it's my job to find out what that is and learn from him." Right? Mm-hmm. Every firm is my superior in some way, and it's my job to find out what that is and learn from them. I can learn from. I've never been to a firm I didn't learn something from. I've never been to a conference I haven't learned something from, a podcast. Right? And so if you approach it from that way, and when someone is getting better results from you, there's sometimes this one little discipline, this one little thing that they're doing differently that makes all the difference. And you got to pay attention and act like you've never heard it before and that you're not doing it. And so whenever a firm says, yeah, we're doing that already, I'm like, okay, watch out. The end is near.
Now, Bill, you're the guru of culture in the legal industry. You're also very good at operations. So tell me, do you think an MSO or the Orion approach of going nationally with various firms is going to hurt the culture of a law firm or improve that culture?
Well, I think it's going to magnify that culture. Whatever that culture was before, it's going to magnify it. And, unless the MSO or the PE that comes in, is overbearing or takes away from what the owners were already doing. But if they have a seat at the table, the event that we were just at, and they have a huge say obviously in where that firm is going, then it's probably going to magnify it. But my hope is, and I just believe that it's going to be a lot of the better firms that do this, that get moving in that direction. It's going to be the better firms that get chosen as platform firms. And most of those have caught on to the culture issue, and they want to treat their clients well, and they want to treat their people well. And if you do that, then you're going to grow. And so I think this is a good thing on the culture side as well. I think people are going to get better treatment.
I agree. And I think that, and with that said, I think, people ask me, Chad, what are my options at this point in terms of like the changing environment? And I tell them, look, you can join a team. Like, hey, there's a group of firms that are putting together an MSO, and they're going to work through that. And you can go be a part of that. You can start a team. You can say, you know what, I'm going to be the first one to go work in. I'm going to go, try and get a bunch of other people. It's tough. It's no easy thing to work with different firms in different jurisdictions with different CRMs and cultures and all that kind of stuff. It's a challenging thing. And so if you haven't done that before, I wouldn't recommend this be your first go. Or the third option is basically saying, you know what, neither one of those is right for me at this time, but I'm going to be an intelligent, intentional observer. I'm going to be watching this, paying attention to what can I do to maybe take advantage of the dynamics that this is creating, maybe down the road, 6, 12, 18, 24 months down the road, and what things can I do at my firm now. And I always say the one thing you can't do is the fourth option, which really isn't an option, is pretend that this isn't happening and just stick your head in the sand, right? So it's really 1, 2, or 3. And the cool thing about whether it's, join a team, start a team, or sit on the side intelligently and intentionally observing what's going on, that those strategies are all very similar. The things you do to build a great firm on the sidelines, or to be a good team member, or to be a good team leader, are all the same things that have been true with firms since firms are started. And so does technology help some of the execution of those things? Yeah, they do. In my book, The 7 Disciplines, those things have been around for ages. Does technology help the execution of some of those things? Absolutely. And I think, and so you look at that, and, building a culture, I think, back to the question is, right now if you're joining a team, there's really a lot of opportunity to pick who you join up with, right? And so if you're kind of a cruising along culture, and look, everyone has that's up to each and every firm. We want to be a great firm. We want to be excellent. We want to constantly push ourselves. Change is part of what we do. That's the mindset that we have. Someone that was more cruising along would probably not be a good cultural fit for what we're trying to do and what we want to be about and what we're trying to build. Firms that are like, look, we also want to be the best at what we do. We want to strive for excellence. We're doing it because being mediocre would just be just not what I want to be about, then that would be a good fit for them. And so you got to align culturally. And I think there's an opportunity now, because we're so new to this, right? A year from now, 2 years from now, there's going to be some of these groups, and it might be harder to join the one that that's fit for at that time. Maybe not. I don't know. But I know right now you have a pretty wide range to pick from, and you should pick people that you align with culturally.
Chad, you talk about your scaling, and you've also said every time you double, everything breaks. So how are you going to prevent everything from breaking when you're bringing in the power of the AI, the power of the MSO, the financial backing? How are you going to stop these firms from breaking when they double and triple in size?
Lots of communication, lots of, the good thing is that, and I tell people, while there's probably no one is scaled things at this level, the closest thing is, in the consulting space, trying to grow, 10, 15, 20, 25 firms at a time in sync in different states, and doing that from a consulting standpoint, which you've done successfully for a while now. When you look at that, you really got to build a lot of trust and dialogue and communication with the key people at each and every one of those firms. And like I said, we're taking on firms that have strong brands, solid operations, and some really, really great people. That's the profile of firms that we want to bring into the platform. And with that said, I want to be a facilitator, servant to those key people, and preserve those things. By contrast, if you're trying to bring on a startup or a turnaround, it is by its nature disruptive. It requires a lot more hands-on, quick decision-making, and that could absolutely be challenging, but that's not where we're at right now. We're building a platform with a bunch of high-performing firms, with high-performing people.
So in those platforms, where do you think the use of artificial intelligence is going to make the biggest impact? Is it going to be in intake? Is it operations? Demand letters? Where do you see, without plugging any of these AI companies, where do you see the biggest change and return on investment?
Right now, I think that obviously there's some really, there's low-hanging fruit of things that are, done in bulk prior, that AI is doing a great job of assisting with, whether it's, summarizing medical records, putting together demand packages, whether it is handling, organizing documents. There's these things that were done in bulk that is kind of low hanging fruit and is almost table stakes now for firms. Like if you're not doing that, okay, I would say you're behind the curve. Then you got these supervisory things that AI does, whether it's monitoring how efficient, effective your intake process is, measuring, how well you performed in the first 90 days, in the sense of like, did you do all the things you should do in a file in this window, and like, almost like an extra set of eyes in a different phases of the case, going, hey, did you miss something? Hey, I'm reading the medical records. Did you miss this injury? Do you see this thing that the client complained of? Just a supervisory second set of eyes is really making a big difference. I'm seeing that, believe it or not, be a big impact to firms because, they're just, we all could use it, right? Just going, hey, this client complained of numbness, tingling in their arms, legs, and, they haven't had an MRI. Okay, we pull up the file and call the client, I saw that you talked to one of our client service specialists, and you said this, and this, and tell me more about that, or whatever. And so going through the documents and allowing us to get more out of the cases, recognize injuries that they're suffering from earlier, understanding maybe where their treatment is going, I think is, believe it or not, sounds simplistic, but is huge in representing our clients.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, for those who don't know, Bill Biggs works with GGL as our executive director. Bill, do you have any other questions for Chad or any comments?
Yeah, definitely a question, Chad. So all the firms, out there that are thinking now, MSO and should I create one? Should I allow PE in? How do they prepare? What's your advice to the firm? It's a small to medium sized PI firm. They're trying to do good stuff, but now the landscape has changed. What's your advice to them about what they should do next?
No, it's learn, find out as much as you can, talk, and look, a podcast like this that lines out the pros, the cons, the different things that to watch out for. Those are, fantastic. There's a book. I'm a big reader. Like, I don't know something about something, I'm going to go get a book. There's one book I'd recommend. It's called The Owner's Manual by Seth Deutsch. It's a roadmap. It really lines out. I mean, I told Seth, I was like, man, I wish I'd heard this a few years before I sold, into the MSO, and it's a great outline. But I would say, like, listen to these podcasts. Now you're seeing a few more conferences go on where people will talk, hey, okay, whatever strategy you're doing, if you do these things, you have better opportunities in each of those different channels. Yeah. Start a team, join a team, grow a great firm on the sidelines. So I think that those are good resources. Attending a seat at the table, I mean, that was very informative last week. That's all we can do. When we were doing this, we didn't have many people to pick up the phone and call, hey, how did you deal with this thing?
Yeah.
There's more.
Well, thank you. Chad, anything else you'd like to add?
No, just thank you for having me, and greatly appreciate getting a chance to talk with both you guys. And yeah, if there's anything that people have questions about at Dudley DeBosier, I'd be happy to answer. See Dudley at DudleyDeBosier.com, and I'll tell you all you want to know about what's going on in the industry.
All right. Look forward to speaking with you in the future. Take care, Chad. Thank you, Bill.